Changes at Nintendo Cube, changes at Monolith Soft, new acquisitions such as Shiver and SRD. Are there changes afoot in terms of how Nintendo is starting to approach relationships with its subsidiary companies and even its appetites for mergers and acquisitions? In this video, we are going to be looking to deep dive some of the legislative changes in Japan and why Nintendo may, at this stage in its odyssey, be a little keener to put its cap on more companies than it has been in the past. First, though, we really need to remember at the outset Satoru Iwata's very clear statement over a decade ago now concerning Nintendo's view on mergers and acquisitions. He said, "When we say we do not do mergers and acquisitions, there are always exceptions, so let me explain about it. We have never said that we will never do mergers and acquisitions in any situation. Actually, we are not against mergers and acquisitions if Nintendo can absorb the real value of the company. However, in most cases, the value of software developing companies is attached to its people, not the company, which is merely a vessel for its people. So when we purchase a company, we can purchase the vessel, but we cannot necessarily purchase the contents. Even if we should compete with others to purchase a software company, although we might be able to increase the sheer number of our developers and to gain a short-term result, we do not think it will do us good in the long run. We have been repeatedly saying that we will not do that kind of merger and acquisition. But times change, and what was true a number of years ago may not be quite the same today. For one thing, Nintendo was simply a smaller company back then, with the Switch era having propelled the company to significant new heights. While ND Cube was once co-owned by Dentsu, Nintendo progressively purchased more and more shares, going from 78% before 2010 to 96%, then 97% in 2015, and 99% in 2023. While no formal information has been issued concerning changes to the share arrangement, and Nintendo Cube's fairly recent updated website does not mention any changes, the new name, Nintendo Cube, not ND Cube, erasing Dentsu, with the evident trajectory of travel, suggests that it's at least likely that Nintendo may soon, or even may already, own the party-focused development group 100%. Add to this, as I recently covered, the three founders of Monolith Soft now no longer own the 4% share that they maintained ever since Nintendo swooped in to purchase the company from Bandai Namco, and in doing so allowed the developers more creative freedom, which President Sugiura and his team felt had been suppressed under Bandai in the years prior. Then we had the acquisitions, and let's recap the trajectory of Nintendo's purchases in recent years. Firstly, Jesnet, which was in 2016 one of Japan's largest distributors for Nintendo products. The company was founded in 1952 and manufactured its own accessories such as amiibo figurine cases, but it was primarily tasked with distributing the many Nintendo products. Nintendo acquired 70% of Jesnet shares in 2016, and by April 2016, they rebooted it as a subsidiary called Nintendo Sales Company Limited, nearly doubled the staff base from 89 to 182 employees, and promptly began taking over distribution as well as creating accessories such as bespoke Nintendo Switch carrying cases styled after Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and ARMS. In the 2019 to 20 financial year, Nintendo quietly purchased the remaining 30% stake in the company, which, given that the company bore the Nintendo name, really seems fair enough. Today, Nintendo Sales Company Limited describes its mission as follows. Nintendo Sales Company Limited started in April 2017 with the aim of improving the Nintendo Group's sales service in the Japanese market. As a result, the group's business was able to establish a consistent system from product planning, development, production to supply, and sales by Nintendo Corporation. Our company is responsible for the sale and logistics of entertainment products from a wide variety of manufacturers, mainly Nintendo Company Limited's products, and currently deals with about 200 stores, about 4,000 retail stores in Japan, and wholesalers. In addition, in order to reliably deliver products to customers, we support sales promotion to business partners and are working to enhance the logistics system. In addition, we also plan, produce, and sell original products that reflect the characters and images that the Nintendo Group has created over the past half century. In this way, we will work from various perspectives to deliver entertainment products to business partners, focusing on Nintendo related products and to increase the opportunities for many customers to contact. It's clear also that Nintendo has put significant resources into allowing the company, which now has bases in Osaka, Kyoto, and Tokyo, to scale up their logistics operations, not just in terms of new people. Here is what the company's website notes with regard to logistics. Logistics functions. In addition to handling Nintendo's own products, we manage the logistics for a wide range of items closely related to video games, such as products from various software manufacturers, peripherals, and accessories for gaming consoles, and even trading cards. Furthermore, with the support of our partner companies, we have established an efficient delivery system that enables distribution to retail stores nationwide, in addition to utilizing our own logistics hubs. At each logistics hub, we have implemented technologies such as piece sorters and digital assortment systems, ensuring accurate and speedy shipping operations even for a high variety and large volume of products, something which I suspect might be incredibly useful with the launch of the new system. After JESNet, there was a long hiatus before Nintendo once again reached for its checkbook, but on the 5th of January 2021, Nintendo acquired the Luigi's Mansion 3 and Mario Strikers studio, Next Level Games. In this case, the transaction appears to be a fairly straightforward one, with the original directors of the company wanting to move on, and so the company becoming available. While Next Level Games had previously celebrated being a relatively small team, Nintendo took the opportunity of the change to ramp up the scale of the company. There was no rebrand for Next Level Games, and they were bought 100% outright, so it was a fairly clean purchase. The same was true with Dynamo Pictures, although here Nintendo wasted no time at all in rebranding it as Nintendo Pictures. I have a fuller video deep diving Nintendo Pictures, and I'll link that at the end of the video, so do check that one out. There was also the acquisition in May 2024 of Shiver, the Florida-based port studio, and here there was some indication that this could have been initiated because of Nintendo's prior relationship with Shiver CEO John Shapert, who once presented a posthumous Lifetime Achievement Award dedicated to Satoru Iwata to Nintendo, with Reggie Fils-Aimé standing in place of the great man. Although not an acquisition, we should also note the November 2022 decision to embark on a joint venture with mobile telecoms firm DNA for the newly minted Nintendo systems. Here the split was 80-20, and 2 years on, we know that the team have been doing some very substantial behind-the-scenes work rejigging Nintendo's sales operations, and we can probably assume that this will continue. There's no particular reason for Nintendo to seek to edge out DNA at this juncture, as DNA is a major player, and this kind of mutually profitable partnership is in Nintendo's interest as well. However, this does follow the model of the Nintendo sales company, and depending on the status of Nintendo Cube, Nintendo Systems may well be the only subsidiary Nintendo fully controls but does not own, not including companies such as, most famously, the Pokemon Company, where Nintendo has a stake but not a controlling one. We'll address those in a bit. But sticking for now to the recent spate of acquisitions, there are three different types of acquisition that we can see. Firstly, we have a progressive acquisition of shares in existing companies, Nintendo Sales, Nintendo Cube, and Monolith Soft, and we'll explore why this might be important to them in a moment. Secondly, we have purchases with a strategic vision in mind. JESNet offered a sales capability, Dynamo Pictures a motion capture functionality, and while these were both organizations with whom Nintendo had some prior relationships, it seems that the impetus was primarily logistical. Thirdly, we can see that they will step in where they can see people whose philosophy aligns with Nintendo and would benefit from being bought out and bought into the Nintendo wheelhouse. This goes back to the Monolith Soft acquisition, but is also evident in their decision to purchase Shiver and to buy Next Level Games and ensure stability of one of the studios that was being highly celebrated, especially after Luigi's Mansion 3 blew the doors off. None of this suggests that Nintendo are embarking on a supermarket sweep of new subsidiaries, and I would guess that a lot of this is opportunistic. The company has been very profitable in recent years, and so it would make a lot of sense to invest some of that carefully to maximize growth. But I wonder if there are other motives afoot. A common question asked on my previous video on Monolith Soft becoming 100% Nintendo owned was whether it made much of a difference at all, whether Nintendo owned 96% or 100%. 4%, the stake that the Monolith Soft founders had in their company, was a derisory number compared to 96%. The 99% stake Nintendo has had as of 2023 in ND Cube, now Nintendo Cube, seems even more overwhelming. It's certainly true that to all intents and purposes and for most day-to-day activities, Nintendo have comfortably been calling the shots in these organizations for a very long time, whatever the specific share breakdown may say. However, Japan does have some particular rights that accrue to minority shareholders, and perhaps for context, it's worth looking in depth at what these are. The law firm Mori Hamada and Matsumoto and their rivals Nagahima Ono and Tsunamatsu are reportedly considered two of the big four major law firms in Japan, and their websites contain a fair amount of useful information on this topic. Mori Hamada and Matsumoto note that new regulations have recently come into force. As they say, according to the Corporate Governance White Paper 2009, published by the Tokyo Stock Exchange, 380 out of 2,378 companies listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, or about 16%, have controlling shareholders. A transaction between a listed company and its controlling shareholder involves a potential risk for the minority shareholders in that a conflict of interest exists, and a controlling shareholder tends to exert undue influence on the company or its board to approve the transaction, the terms of which may be unfair to the company but beneficial to the shareholder. To be clear, the situation we're discussing here isn't quite the same thing, as the subsidiaries we're talking about with Nintendo are not listed companies, but that's not to say that the regulations don't have a broader remit. As the article goes on to note, while in the past the 2005 Companies Act has not had express provision allowing minority shareholders to bring a case against controlling shareholders, this has begun to change. As they note, the regulatory authorities have introduced a variety of rules as part of the collective efforts by the Japanese government, stock exchanges, and other regulatory authorities to improve Japan's market reliability. Among other things, the new regulation implemented by the Tokyo Stock Exchange has had a practical impact on the corporate activities of listed companies. The protections already in the Companies Act make the directors liable for damages if they breach their duties to the company as a whole. However, unlike the UK or US, the majority shareholders themselves do not owe any duty to their minority shareholders, and so controlling shareholders can usually use sharp elbows to get their own way. Nagahima Ono and Tsunamatsu outline a fuller list which you can see on screen, and I won't go through every one individually except to note that even if the minority shareholders can bring an action, it doesn't mean that they could actually effect change as a result. Some would be aggravating to the major shareholder, and potentially it could draw press attention, as for example if the minority shareholders convene board meetings, but most relate to an ability to expose legal lapses, which I'm sure would not be an issue for a company as fastidious as Nintendo. There is in fact a trigger mechanism as well to compulsorily purchase shares for those owning more than 90% of the total voting rights, and this can be done without the need for a resolution at a shareholders meeting. In other words, both Monolith Soft and ND Cube didn't require Nintendo to stand on ceremony to acquire additional shares, and the fact that they didn't previously suggests that they either didn't feel the need or did not wish to disturb their relatively stable business relationships. It is curious, though, that whereas in 2019, Nintendo had three companies where they had majority control but not 100% of the shares, this coming year they will have, well, it depends on what happens with the Nintendo Cube, but potentially just Nintendo Pictures, where they are not 100% in control. This can be explained either by Nintendo's recent financial success and the need to do something with that money that guarantees their long-term success, or it could be coincidence, but I do wonder whether there are more regulatory changes that are making these kinds of minority share arrangements less attractive to the majority shareholder. Nikko Asset Management has an article called From Taboo to Trend: The Rise of Shareholder Activism in Japan, which notes, once considered taboo in Japan, shareholder activism has been evolving. Japanese equity market culture has been changing dramatically, enabling shareholders to be more vocal and sometimes even hostile towards the companies they invest in, all in the name of shareholder engagement. They note, increasing pressure from shareholders and the wider market has been driving company management teams to consider taking their companies private. In fact, as the chart below shows, 2023 was a record-breaking year in terms of the transaction value of Japanese management buyouts. This is also another way companies are unlocking value. Now, I'm not suggesting that there was any negativity in the purchase of Monolith Soft or in the changes at ND Cube or anything else. But it does seem to me that Nintendo has a vested interest in normalizing its ownership situation of these companies, if only to prevent even the mildest possibility of some kind of disagreement down the track. If they own the companies 100%, it's never even going to be a possibility that there could be a fallout later on. Nintendo Systems is a different beast, since it was always a joint project with DNA, and it may well be that in future Nintendo do buy out DNA once they can operate at sufficient scale, much as they did with Dentsu. For the time being, though, I suspect that they see much benefit in having external experience with particularly the Japanese telecoms infrastructure. I should also note that there are four associates of Nintendo where Nintendo owns a significant but not a controlling interest in the companies, and these are worth briefly considering. With a 32% stake, we have the Pokemon Company, though arguments could be made that Nintendo's effective share of that company is larger than the nigh on one-third stake suggests, but we'll park those discussions for a moment. Then there's Warp Star Inc., a joint venture between Nintendo and the home of Kirby, HAL Laboratory. The 50-50 partnership has become a stable business relationship for a very long time. It's not entirely clear who the remaining two that are mentioned in Nintendo's annual report are, because as of that latest financial report, they only list the Pokemon Company. Another is likely to be the Pux Corporation from a previous investment linked to technology that was ultimately used in the Wii Fit game for Wii U. While Nintendo doesn't appear to have had much to do with Pux in recent years, we know that they still had a 27% share in the Pux Corporation as recently as 2023. And while Pux have had other investors, Morpho Company Limited purchased a 20% stake in 2019, for example, there is no sign that Nintendo themselves have stepped back, and they are still listed as a major shareholder on the Pux Company website. We know that Nintendo had a 5% stake also in Cygames of Dragalia Lost fame. I've also seen it speculated that one of the extra groups that they are affiliated with could be the Seattle Mariners, but as far as I can tell, Nintendo sold their stake in this rather surprising investment back in 2016. Most likely, as the unnamed organization is Creatures Inc., who Nintendo reportedly owned a 10% share in as recently as 2016, but currently the precise identity of all of these affiliates is slightly shrouded in mystery. At any rate, these affiliates are in a very different position from the rest of Nintendo's subsidiaries. Warp Star and the Pokemon Company notably are set up to handle some of the complex needs of their biggest franchises in collaboration with their co-owners, and so until or unless Nintendo move to purchase HAL, Game Freak and Creatures, these arrangements are unlikely to change too significantly. The setups are highly stable and the balance of power between the various entities are relatively equal, so there's no evident need for Nintendo to make changes as a response to regulatory forces or investor interference. For a more detailed look behind the scenes at Nintendo, do check out this video on screen right now, which looks at some of the senior figures of the company, and do check out my Patreon link below for more content like this. Big thanks to anyone who likes, shares, subscribes, and comments, and I will see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.